Thank you for your interest in Kapow software. In this video, I'll be demonstrating automating content migration into Ektron 8.5 with Kapow Katalyst. This is the Kapow extraction browser. The extraction browser allows us to interact with and extract content from the website. We can extract visual components from the website, along with non-visual values such as metadata from the HTML or properties from the browser such as the URL. The content of interest is selected visually and mapped into a structured data object with attributes that you define. This is an overview of Kapow's content migration process. The content is extracted directly from the website or other sources with Kapow robots and stored into an intermediate database. Here, the content can be formatted, categorized, and transformed to meet the taxonomy of the target CMS. The first step of the content migration process is to do an inventory of the website. The steps of the inventory robot up above were created simply by interacting with the website in the extraction browser. This robot loads each page of the website into the extraction browser and then uses the for each URL step to loop through the website and find each URL on the page. The steps that follow extract the URL from the website and then validate that the URL belongs to the current domain. The content type of the link is also extracted and saved into the database. So after the inventory robot is run, we'll have a database table of all the URLs that make up the website. This represents our to-do list for our content migration. This is the first of two extraction robots. This one's fairly simple. There's no visual component. We're simply going to query the inventory database that we just created and find all of the URLs for the resource files, such as the PDF files, JPEGs, etc. We're going to save all of those files to the local hard drive and then store the location in the inventory database table. I'll switch to debug mode now and run the robot, and here we can see each URL, each file name, and each file size as it's saved off to the local hard drive, and the file location is stored back to our database. This second extraction robot goes back to the inventory database, and this time we're going to query for all of the HTML content. We define an area within the page as an article. We're going to have a loop that goes through every article on the page, and it finds the title of the article, and that's mapped into our content object down here when I pass the step. And the next attribute is the subtitle. That's mapped into the content object. And then the article date. The next step extracts the author. And then we extract the body of the article. And now that we've fully populated our content object, we're ready to store that object into the database. As the robot runs, we can see all the article attributes as they're saved into the database. This robot uploads the articles to Ektron by posting add smart form requests to the Ektron API. We start by querying the database for the first article, which is populated into the article smart form data object. The following steps then map these values into the form. The next step presses the submit button. The server responds back with a content ID that will now extract from the page and stored into our database with this article. The robot will continue to loop through all of the rows of the database, adding each article into Ektron and saving our content ID to the database. This robot will iterate through our database for each binary file. Each file will then be added to our form so we can post an add file request to the Ektron API. The file name is added to the form and each of the other file attributes, and then the submit button is clicked. Ektron responds with a content ID. The content ID is added to the database for that file. I can switch to debug mode, run the robot, and each of the files in our inventory is added into Ektron, and the document ID is added back into our intermediate database for each file. Next, a relinking robot will be ran that will replace all of the hrefs and source file references and all the HTML files with these new doc IDs so that the HTML files will reference the new content where it resides in Ektron. If you have any questions or you would like to see a more in-depth content migration demonstration, please use the information below to contact Content Migration Sales at Kapow Software.